Be there.
Thank you.
Meet you. Hey, guys.
All set. Hi, everyone. Today is May 9th, and welcome to the hybrid meeting of the Northborough Design Review Committee. This open meeting of the Northborough Design Review Committee is being conducted in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Northborough Design Review Committee are allowed to participate either in person or remotely. The Act allows the Northborough Design Review Committee to meet in person and remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of this meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda, unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to review the live stream of the recording of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings via the YouTube link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. I noticed it's a link right to YouTube. There's no.
Yeah.
It's there. Okay. So first on our meeting today is a continued review of 61 and 65 West Main Street, the fire station. And we have HKT here today, and I'm not sure, is there going to be any new updates or no?
We do have a short PowerPoint highlighting some of the changes that we've made since your last submission, if I could share that.
Sure.
Let me promote you one moment.
They're all promoted already.
I think I'm just.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be all set.
Okay. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So we just have a few updates. We wanted to highlight some of the changes that we made since we last met with you and that you see in the most recent submission that we made. And one of them was the relocation of the sidewalk. There was a lot of discussion previously about where we had been showing the sidewalk. We had been following the town's design review guidelines and had pushed the sidewalk back from the street edge there to create a green strip between the sidewalk and the street. But after a lot of discussion about how the sidewalk might continue down the street and the connection at the abutter here, it was suggested that we move the sidewalk up against the street, which we're showing in the latest submission. We'll look for some guidance from you about the process to get a waiver from the design guidelines if there's anything else that we need to do other than presenting this to you for that process. And there was some questions about what the emergency gate would look like at the rear of the building. The landscape architect is showing this detail on their drawing set to show the gate. The gate is going to be manually operated. It's not going to be electrified or anything. We did talk to the fire department about that and how they wanted that gate to operate. And we're still working through the design, but this is an example of what we would be specifying for that gate. Similarly, the dumpster enclosure has been discussed. We showed a photograph of what a similar dumpster enclosure would look like, one that has been constructed at another building that we did. The intent would be to have the brick that's visible on the outside and the masonry cap on the top of it to match the brick and masonry details of the building so that it blends in with the overall project design. But the enclosure itself will be similar to this. It will be a masonry enclosure on 3 sides with some metal gates to allow opening and closing to access the dumpster. And then the drawing set that you show or that you see shows the latest landscape plan. There had been talk about adding some more trees at one point, and those drawings incorporate those and have vegetative buffers that have been enhanced around the property. And it also shows increased fencing height at the retaining walls. We had previously been showing a guardrail height as is mandated by the building code, but the request had been to increase that to more of a fence height, and we have done that and increased it up to 5 feet, and that shows in the latest drawings that you have.
It's
We,
not
s-
Got the
we,
drawings.
on.
we do have in the packet that we sent you some photographs of the materials that we had selected for the basis of design, and those are materials that we had presented at the Joint Design Review and Fire Station Building Committee meeting on the project site. The Fire Station Building Committee had selected what their preferred materials were for the design, and these renderings represent that, with a red brick for the main brick and then a brown brick for the accent color brick at the base and at the banding, a green metal for the windows and doors and paneling above the doors, and accents at the hose and training tower, and then a grayish, warm gray brown color for the roof. So those are the basis of design materials that we plan on specifying. As we said before, because it's public bid, we can specify a basis of design, but we won't know until construction the exact product and exact color that the contractor will submit, but it will be close to those basis of design materials that we specify. And that's it. It's a very short presentation just to highlight the changes that we've had in the latest submission.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, just in looking at the quick diagram we put together on the dumpster area, is that going to have like a 6-foot space behind it so you can get behind the area if you have to, or is it going against the wall directly? In the photograph, there's a little bit of space, but it's hard to see, whatever was presented on the screen.
Right.
It just shows a little bit of a walk space, perhaps.
Share my screen again. I should have left that open. So the dumpster, let me grab my highlighter here. So the dumpster is actually located here in the Northborough Fire Station project and would be accessed on this side here. The retaining wall is back here, so there's quite a bit of space around it to maneuver.
Yeah,
So
no,
the
I
mason
mean against the building.
against
Yeah,
so
it does.
the buildings, sorry, the building's up here,
Okay.
and the retaining wall is here, and then the dumpster enclosure is here. So there's space all around on 4 sides of the dumpster enclosure.
But there is, so what's the gray or darker, is that a building or that's just grass?
That's the wall on the back. That's the wall.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, okay, you have a U, and go to the next picture that you showed us.
That's another project.
That's
Right,
another project. This is
That's
just
different?
this is a photograph of an actual dumpster enclosure that's
Okay,
been
just see,
installed.
so when I'm looking at how it sits against the wall and the shadow behind it, that's all I was asking about. I didn't realize that was not what yours is gonna look like.
Yeah, no, so
Yeah.
yeah, this is just a different orientation in another project.
Okay, no problem.
Do you have any other questions? Anyone?
Just looking at the new thing, let's see.
Do you have a picture of the front view of the street view that includes all the trees and the changes that were made?
We don't have the trees on it, so as we had said before, we were waiting to add the landscape until we had sort of gotten any comments from the design review committee, and I understand from a couple days ago that you've reviewed it and there aren't any comments on the landscape. So we will add some landscape features to the renderings now at this point, but this is the latest rendering for the most recent building design.
Just for I know it was talked about planning board, but not a design review, but a butter called in, and so there were some trees added to the back because of the abutter. I'm assuming that was because of the abutter's concern for some more buffering the trees in the back.
I think the trees were added because there was the comment that the design review guidelines call for some trees at the street, and we couldn't add the trees at the street because of views for the trucks, the apparatus as they leave the station. It would obscure their views. So the request was to add the trees elsewhere on the site so that we have the total quantity of trees that would be required by the guidelines, but they just would be in a different part of the site.
Okay, so they're like 6 feet when they're planted.
I don't remember the exact number. Janet, do you remember the exact
It's
number?
2 to 2.5 inch caliber.
Yeah.
So it depends on the species of tree, how tall it'll be. But oftentimes at the 2.5 inch caliber, they're around 9 feet tall.
Keep the drawings at 6 to 8, but they're gonna grow to like 20, the way it's spaced out possibly. 9, 6, 8, 9, somewhere around that.
Okay. I wanted to ask too, I know on the side, we've got trees coming up onto the side next to the hillside grill. There's that long stone wall that goes along that area and then comes up into the.
Yeah, I don't have a plan set anymore, so.
Because the stone walls have got some history and some value to them. So are they not, they won't be disturbed when you're doing all this work, is that correct? I know that's crazy to ask the architect.
Are you talking about the stone wall that's along the property line here?
Yes, there's one along the property line and then it goes up into the back part of the property. There's 2 or 3 on the back part of the property. That
Yeah.
when we were doing the walkthrough.
Those will be disturbed through the construction activities in order to do the grading work that needs to be done around the building. Those will need to be removed in order to get the grades to be
Okay, where were
adjusted.
they put? They're part of the asset of the town.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Where will they be put once they're disturbed? Is there a spot that has been selected for that? I don't want them taken off the property and just dispersed. I like that to be something the town can use for other projects. So is there something that's put aside where these rocks are going to be stored if they're going to be moved?
We're not calling for that now, but if that is something that the town wants to have the contractor remove them and return them to the town for the town's use, that could be accommodated in the documents.
All right, I think that should be. I know that one of the other selectmen has been asking that question as well.
You're talking about the historic town, stone wall in the back of the.
There's a bunch, there's actually a bunch. I probably have 4 stone walls there, but the one that goes up the hill that breaks the property line up. And then behind it, there's 2 or 3 different ones.
I wonder if that's something the DPW can just go and get before the construction.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to plan it, but
Yeah.
we have to also plan where we would put them because there's some areas of town that are like, oh, we're kind of filled up.
Put them back to the White Cliffs.
Oh,
No.
don't do that.
The ones that were taken away.
Well, that might be a stone, well, yeah, maybe we can put a stone wall from one of those.
I know there were some big granite pieces and they took them and put them over at the DPW shed until they used them at the park.
Okay, well, that area does have a lot, so maybe that it could be stored at the DPW yard. But I think it's today's materials are very hard to come by, and those would be very important. Plus the fact it's part of that country road or what's the scenic road bylaw, right? If you
No,
take
it's
them
not.
away.
It doesn't qualify.
Item
You
number
have
20.
to be on one of the scenic roads.
Oh, is that
Route 20
right?
Yes, and Route 20 is not a scenic.
Well, that's a matter of opinion.
Well,
So-
What's in here?
Yeah, no, I'm.
Newton Street is a scenic road, that's why we have all the glass stone wall and stone wall.
Yeah, so, but that doesn't make the stones any less valuable. I just wanted to put that on the record today.
Okay. All right. Do you guys have anything else to add?
No, I just looking forward to an elevation of the landscape.
Okay. Well, I think that's all. What we usually do is put together a memo for the planning board. I want to thank HKT for coming. it's kind of tricky because, you know, I hate to go there, but the train had left the station before. So I felt like there weren't a lot of comments that we could make that weren't already voted on. So as a design review member, it's hard to write the memo because, you know, I think the decisions were made before it got to us.
Yeah,
But-
I think any suggestion we would make now would be counterproductive and slow the project down, so.
Right. So, but I do want to thank you for, you know, putting the sidewalk along the front road and,
Yes. Good idea.
Yep.
All right, well, I don't have any other questions right now. Mark?
okay, so we're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Okay. So we have to decide as a board, do we want to write a memo or do we just, there's really nothing we can write.
Well, who would the memo be to? Just.
It usually goes
I'm
to
new, so.
Yeah, it goes to the planning board or the zoning board, whoever receives it, and it's usually states like that the design review committee met with the applicant. And although we don't recommend approving or denying, but we say these are the comments we would have should you approve it. So, but since we really don't have a lot of comments, because, you know,
Well,
I don't know if we want to even,
go down there. Well, it's going to go to planning board next, right? The
Yep.
ZBA is already come and gone,
yep,
so.
I kind of was trying to think of ideas that we could.
Yeah, the sidewalk doesn't have to go to the ZBA, right? That's.
No, the planning board would waive it, so we could write that, you know, we recommend waiver of the design review for the guideline for the sidewalk,
Okay.
so.
That would be helpful if I may, just from our point of view, if you do that to the planning board.
Yeah. That's what I'm taking. Here, no, I don't, I have so many papers. All right, here it is. So, I mean, the design review committee met with HKT and the fire station building committee representative. What I have was January 25th, February 29th, May 9th. And the committee reviewed materials on the site at March 20th. Like, it wasn't really a meeting, but we did go over and look at the materials. What I was thinking, I just have the site plan, building size, design, retaining walls and materials were discussed, but the majority of the comments had already been voted on by the fire station building committee in advance of our meeting. So we would recommend, somehow I want to work right in that we would recommend waiving, you know, should you approve the site plan, we would recommend waiving the sidewalk setback required by the design review guidelines. So, but I don't really have any more comments to add. I felt like some of our comments were misrepresented, and I really don't want to get into that anymore.
No, they were, but not really by anybody directly involved, so.
Yeah.
Indirectly involved, but not directly.
Yeah, it just was too bad that it happened. So, I mean, I don't want to lead anyone on that we actually made changes, but we just have that. We just kind of went along and listened to the presentations and yeah, I don't want to put words in either of your mouths either.
Well, no, I agree with you. I think it's unfortunate that things have played out the way they have. I mean, you want to support and be helpful for anything that's happening, certainly on the municipal level, but I think there's a lot of things that, you know, came to light, certainly at the town meeting, and so it's better that we probably withdraw any, you know, any remarks other than the sidewalk, because I think that's important. It's part of the look of the town and all that. But
Do you want me to include something about the historic farming wall?
Yeah, the stone wall?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. So, and I don't know, I mean, anything that's, I did take some photos, I can submit some photos.
So the comment would be that you would like to see it preserved and reused elsewhere.
Reused by the town elsewhere.
I can say i.e. scenic roads.
Using the scenic roads reasoning?
No, that,
Where would
you
they?
know, like,
where would they be
in
used?
certain locations along the scenic roads, the stone walls
Replacements.
may have
Yeah,
kind of deteriorated or been removed through the years, so they could be rebuilt.
that and in the
along
White
those
Cliffs as
scenic
well,
roads.
because that could be used up at the White Cliffs,
So
so.
I was kind of joking about what.
Well, no, there was a point
Yeah,
that
there was a stone wall there, you can see in some of the old
yeah,
photos.
I mean, you could do something with that too. So on, on properties that we have, I don't want them to go to. You can take a rock, you can take a rock, you can take a rock.
Okay, I will add that.
And maybe make a notation, there's at least four runs of them anyway. So there's a lot of rocks, it's not a small project, so. And is that something that we would normally do before, before they start digging everything up, taking it?
I would run it by the DPW, because if someone could take them away first, you don't want to have to pay prevailing wages for someone to come remove the rocks.
Right.
Everything is
Right, well,
an added cost.
I'm also thinking that they just took all those trees down by the water tower. So that area is kind of open. So they could put some pieces there.
Could even be like a Boy Scout type of project. I don't know, I don't want to put words in their
Well,
mouths
they're
either.
big rocks.
Oh, they are big rocks?
Yeah,
I didn't,
unless they have a little machine that can do it,
oh, I haven't seen them.
yeah. I mean, usually they're at least like this.
Okay, yeah, I
You
didn't
know
know
that, right? I know, because I move rocks around my house all the time. It's like, I can't move that one. But thank you for bringing that up. I think that's, I know that Selectman Hirsch has been talking a lot about that stone wall and stone walls around town.
And if you want, I can send you what I just read out loud, and if the board agreed with how I worded it, then we can use that.
Okay.
So, all right, well, next on our agenda is the check sheet. And there have been some iterations going back and forth between Lori and Mark. And it seems like I think we're on the same page right now. I want to thank Mark for, putting together the idea of the checklist and putting it together. And Lori, you worked on it too, and you changed it so the wording was a checklist. And I felt that, it was a good team effort. And I feel like I haven't gone through and checked all the bylaws to see how much I have to do. Lori, I know all the guidelines I think are there. I haven't checked, and I haven't checked to see if all the bylaw.
I did have Michelle run through
I just see this.
and just double check the bylaw. It took her a long time. And she only found one little
Okay.
typo. It was the third one down on the front page under building placement and orientation. And the only thing is where you put A, she said that the proper reference is B. So that was it.
I called you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say I started to get, blurry eyed after a while.
It's,
I'd say I tried to capture we had like 12 discrepancies between the two lists, and I tried to capture those in that memo field, but then put back the original wording, just to eliminate any confusion. I don't think I missed any, but I may have.
Oh, and also Michelle had a question. So I would like to change, so wherever I put all districts, it would be more accurate to say all applicable districts, because of course, the single family residential districts aren't held, and they don't go through site plan review. So make
And
that
the only
change.
thing, eventually I would like to put a filter on there so that if we've got a project in a particular district, that we can highlight the filter and it would capture that district plus the all districts category. So as long as we can do that in a way that's friendly for that.
So then you don't have to go through all the
Yeah,
ones
yeah,
that
sure.
aren't applicable.
Right, you
Yeah.
got 100 things on that list, so
Yeah,
cut it down to 50, it's nice.
yes, that would definitely make things faster.
I do think it'd be a great idea for, I mean, I think it's great for me personally. And actually, I found a lot of other, some bylaws that we, haven't gone through that just came out by reading to do the checklist.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we missed that one.
Yeah.
There's so
that's-
many.
I think I found two, and she found most of them, I mean, yeah, there's certain things, and it's questionable whether we want to even include them. But the more we look at, the better, I think, it's more complete.
Hmm.
Okay.
Is this a copy of what you're looking at?
Oh, where'd you get
I
that?
stole it from there.
Oh.
From Laura's file, just to look at.
Oh,
And so you notice that I
Is
highlighted,
that the same?
that has Michelle's notes on it.
I'm just looking here though.
Yeah, so this is the one that I emailed out, that's the Mark's latest.
Oh, okay.
And then I had Michelle go through and see if there were any discrepancies, so she made her comments in red. So there were a couple of things where we had shortened the language. So she had put the whole text as it appears in the zoning bylaw.
yeah, because I noticed the guidelines have even shortened versus the current bylaws, especially on, what was, the one about parking, I know the bylaw is much longer and encourages deviation.
It was so gigantic that I thought it would just be easier to say compliance with section
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes, and you
Because
got
it
the
was
link,
like an entire page and then it's like, well, if you're in this district, these are the requirements. If you're in this district, these are the requirements. And I figured that table was long enough,
yeah.
so.
But I think having the link there, people can double check it, if it is short like that, they know that they should really click the link and keep the whole thing.
Oh, so when so these are hyperlinked.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that for
If
some
that,
reason.
I think she found that when she tried them, they didn't work at her because she didn't allow cookies or something like that. And
We gotta watch
you gotta be careful with hyperlinks, they break easy. So,
Okay, well, that's cool.
You could put a little note on that too, just saying that if you can't,
Well-
access, go back and check a couple of different things. And so it gives people an idea that there is a way of getting it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't even try, of course, I saw it was underlined, but I didn't even think that there would be a hyperlink, so.
Yeah, I stumbled
I like
across
it
how to
even
do
more.
Yeah.
And you can tell, you get near the end of these and, basically everything starts saying all districts and all that type of stuff. And that's when I was getting fatigued too, so. I think there are actually some in these later sections that are just called guidelines, but I have found, one of them anyway is actually a bylaw. So it's a work in progress still.
Do you think it helps to highlight what's a guideline or what's a bylaw, like you mentioned before? Or do you think it's good it's good to have it written there, that says guideline and bylaw, but does it help if just the guideline ones are highlighted or something?
I think changing, it's easier.
So it stands out.
It stands out. I like that. I just
Most
have,
important ones are bylaws though.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
they're written as
Yeah.
guidelines.
There is the challenge, so that's where I put the language over here, where it may be required in certain districts, but then it's just recommended or a guideline in other districts, so
Yeah.
it could be both.
yeah,
And there are a number of them that are like that.
So that's not worth highlighting because it would get confused.
Yeah, so then, like when I had highlighted it, I'm like, oh man, should I be highlighting it?
Well,
Because
yeah.
it makes it look like it's a standard everywhere and it's not.
yeah.
So that's why I put it in the
It usually
narrative.
is something to consider though, I would think, people do get held to that standard even if it's not required, just what I've observed. So, The guidelines are good to follow.
Yeah. Well, I have to talk, I have this one box here that when I saw it, I was very excited. Crosswalks are clearly defined through the use of raised, textured, or color treatments. Yes,
Yeah.
Is
yes.
that a bylaw or a guideline?
I don't know.
It's a bylaw,
There you
so.
go. So, because I go to different towns and I see the ones that have the white lines and the yellow on the inside, or they have the stripes, or it makes you see it. After a while, the paint on the roads, you see it every day, you don't even look. And people are I've seen some pretty decorative ones that look like you're stepping on stones three-dimensionally, which I thought was kind of cool. But that's, this is it. People have to walk. This is one of the things that at least protects them legally. If you're out of a crosswalk and you get hit, you don't have any legal recourse.
Right.
And kids and everybody else seem to walk around it, like, you're like 2 feet away, step in it and protect your little butts. But they're like, oh, we don't need this. But I just had to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw one in West Roxbury, and it was in front of an elementary school, and it was a raised crosswalk, but on it, they had painted the winners of the drawing contest that they had.
No,
So
really?
the machine must have done it, but they were giant versions of the kids' images. There's no way you can speak through that, because you just realize there are little kids.
Right. And I think that's just, it's just, it's happening all around us. There's no reason we can't do it.
Yeah.
And especially that with the schools. Because people, I literally this morning at 4:45 this morning, had somebody hot rod all the way down my street. It's going right past the school. It's an elementary school and a hairpin turn.
Yeah.
That's clever. But at least if you can do things visually that get people's attention, I think everybody appreciates that, especially when it comes to the kids.
There's some really cool stencils too. That
Yeah.
they can do with special reflector paint. And so they do, all sorts of different things. They can do brick pattern, they can do circles, they can do, serpentine, they can do all sorts of neat things, so.
So,
Instead of a doors project or a chairs project,
Right,
they could do a crosswalk.
well, that's it, and I'm sure we would get some help doing that. And I think, starting at the schools, so you're doing something that's going to catch somebody's attention. So perfect places, Northgate. Because that people have forgotten that that's a neighborhood. It's just such a cut through now, double yellow line on it and everything. But you've got Chilby, and they don't have the crosswalk guards much anymore. I think we've lost 2, and I don't think they've been replaced. So the one there and the one at Lincoln Street are gone. And there's never been one, I don't know how many years ago there was one on Maple Street in Maine, but now she has a plaque.
All right, back to the checklist. So do we think it's in a good place? So for our next applicant, we can use the checklist. I think so. Do you guys? I think,
I think, we'll be forgiving if there's things we missed too, It's not
Right.
like it's gonna be, it's a work in progress.
so it'll be online with a hyperlink so an applicant can go through it. And then for us, I like printout, so I might.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, how many pages are we up to with it? Is it still around 8, 7?
I think we're up to 7. 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, 7 and a little.
Yeah, I think if applicants look at that, they're at least aware of the bylaws and the guidelines.
Some of them I was thinking might come to design review and be like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. But then by the time they go to planning board, it's gonna be pretty much done.
Right, and that's, it's the whole point, right? To make that easier for because their meetings are a lot more than ours.
I think it's also helpful, so, I when I do the pre-application meetings with people, I always tell them, hand them the design guidelines and tell them that they have to look in the zoning book at this chapter. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they do it.
Right.
So if we hand them this checklist, then they can say that.
Yeah, and if they do the pull down thing and put the check there, they don't have to make a comment, but if there's anything questionable, then they make a comment and explain themselves, give them a chance.
We should add that thing up to the top that Bob mentioned. There's a little disclosure that it may not fully include everything, because we might have forgotten something out of the bylaws.
Yeah, we should somehow emphasize that the column here that has the bylaw number is governing.
The other thing you're gonna have to worry about is as zoning bylaws change
Right.
from time to time, somebody's gonna have to take the responsibility of editing this document.
Yeah.
To make it valid.
Actually, we are gonna have to edit it based on the changes that were adopted at town meeting.
Yeah.
Last week, yeah.
And that was the weakness of the old guidelines, they hadn't been updated since 2012.
Well, a date too.
Oh,
Yeah, dates. And then you get the revised date and,
So why are some of these yellow?
The ones that you had gray, because I'm old and I can't read black on gray. I can't, make sure I maintain the highlighted rows, but I just put it in that one cell in yellow,
Okay,
so that I can still read it.
so
But I didn't want to
we
delete
could
it.
probably just get rid of all the
Right,
colors.
yeah, if it's got a number, maybe double check it, because some of the guideline numbers were referenced in the old guidelines, so double check that those are accurate, but yeah, if it's got a number, it's a bylaw.
or maybe make a note on that then. Again, like a little cheat sheet where somebody's looking at this for the first time. They may not even understand how it all works, but by saying that, I think that's another helpful thing on the page.
Saying that it's a hyperlink.
Not just a hyperlink, but
It's the text of the hyperlink that's really important, because
Yeah.
that's the bylaw. And then that gives us some flexibility on the description to, put it in layman's terms or emphasize what needs to be emphasized.
right.
Now, Mark, on yours, I think the version that she has,
I don't
there
know
were
if
some
I-
notes on the far right of the first page that Shoshana and I were kind of
Oh,
scratching our heads
Oh,
about.
okay, yeah, I can see it. That's the pull down menu. So normally that column would be hidden and not printed. So when you have, if you add an item there in the first 10 fields,
Okay.
it shows up as a choice on the pull down menu.
Oh, okay,
And that's something I recently added the OK, see notes, as, versus a check or an X, which is kind of cut and dry, or,
Good.
when it gets into gray area, you can say OK and see notes or variance required or something like that.
right.
All right, that's great. And the last, does anyone else have anything else they want to add about the checklist?
Can we make are we, being the designer that I'm not, can we make some photograph or something in the cover that would be, like maybe a bridge or something that's a little bit attractive that could be the cover of it, because design guidelines have the three or four houses on them, right?
I have to look. Yep, they do. They have a couple of buildings.
Kind of taking that style, just pumping it up a little bit. I don't like the way that's put together, but at least, something that's,
I'd have to add a page, so, I mean, if we
Well,
have
and
a
you
blank
can print
page at
on-
the
you
end,
can
then
print
you
on
can
both.
do it.
you can, the cover and then the inside's information of blah, 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 right?
Oh, we
Well,
working on
maybe what we could do is we could do like a PDF version
Yeah.
for printout with a cover and then it has to be in Excel, the hyperlinks to work, right?
No, I think that you can, if you have it full Adobe, you can make the hyperlinks work and you can make the pull down menus work on Adobe Forms.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like your IRS forms. You can print them, you can type on them when they're in the machine.
All right, well, Michelle can do that.
She can try it, and yeah,
all from the.
yeah, no, I mean, if you can't do it, we'll make adjustments, that's.
But if you want, Michelle, I'll help you. I'll make a color. How about that? I use my old fashioned design idea. But I
So
think,
can transfer over to.
yeah, of course you make it so it goes into the PDF. So, but that, again, it's just kind of it's like the new, the new world.
Okay.
And,
And then we'll just attach it to the guidelines, so
Yeah.
it'll just be in the back.
yeah, so at least it gives, it's now, and the thing that I find is through all these years that I've done this stuff, if you have something, even this catches your eye, everybody has all these documents and they can't find things. So you're looking for everything. So if you can make it a little distinctive, it's going to be, easier to find, easier to use.
Yeah.
And somebody will, oh, I couldn't find it. I didn't get it. Right, engineer?
But if it's stapled to the back, they won't see it.
Of this?
Well, it's gonna be stapled to the back of the design
Design
guidelines.
guidelines.
Well, if it's
But
required
it
to
will
be
be
submitted
passed up.
for a review to this
Yeah.
team,
Yeah.
then it'll force it. And take the surprises out of coming in before us and find out.
Okay.
You need a side setback or buffer.
Yeah,
And then we'll just add it to the webpage for the design review committee as a button. So it can be, they can click on it and it can be a live document or it can be printed.
okay, and then this is gonna go horizontally, where the other one's vertically, right? Because this will stay as a read at horizontal.
Yeah.
So
And
so
this column right here will be hidden. That's just for our purposes.
So when it's printed out, it's shorter?
Yeah, this column gets hidden, this column gets hidden, and this is just, as we review this document, we can make our notes.
So do you have to do it on the legal size paper? If you're gonna print it out?
No, you figure. Everything over here is not gonna be printed, and this column's not gonna be printed, so it's actually, we might actually be able to go portrait on it.
So I'm just gonna delete all those notes that you have in.
No, just
Yeah.
hide them, don't delete them.
Well, isn't this project specific?
No, these are. When we had a discussion, some of the sections we wanted to move, like, what the fourth one down says, massing. We had considered moving that guideline to the massing section. So I didn't want to delete those notes, so I just preserved them here. But they're nothing relevant to anybody's project or anything like that, that's just for us. So, the second column after the description is going to be the pull down menu, where you can do the check mark. And then the notes after that, those are the two important ones, and then the last two columns are reference fields. So the link and the area it applies.
And then the last page is what, a summary that we can use to help write memos?
Well, that's probably not even printed here, right? Because that would be for our, on the Excel spreadsheet, there's a second tab, which is a summary where you have each of the categories, and you could say, and it'd be for like the zoning board, to just get the highlights of it, saying they met all of the criteria, with the exception of something which they needed some leniency on, but we approved, or, and stuff like that, just kind of an executive summary, one page verbiage that we would come up with as a team based on a review where they've done their self-appraisal and we've done the rest of all that, so.
And there are some things, and they're not in the guidelines, but we still always bring them up, like snow removal. Because Dave's a snow guy, so when he's here, he brings up, that might be type of snow removal. So I don't know if we add it.
I mean, we haven't come to a point where we're talking about adding guidelines, but I think we should come to that point. And I know that's a lengthy procedure, so we don't need to tackle it now, but.
It is so when you go to the site plan review submission requirements, they have to depict the location of snow. So that's really something that the planning board and the ZBA are looking at. So I don't think we have like an actual guideline. It's just you have to show.
Do we have a bylaw or?
Well, isn't there something?
Yeah, it's in the rules and regulations.
Okay, I mean, if
So
it's
it's
something
one
we
of the
can link to,
submission requirements.
then, as long as we can link to the verbiage of it, then I'm pretty confident we can just add it.
Only just save the applicant time so they know to put it on their site plan if they're doing site plans. Like, it's not,
Well, we also remember that there is a submission checklist for site plan review. So there's another one that talks about everything that needs to be shown. So that's what I use when I'm doing my review to make sure that the application is complete.
okay.
So I don't think we have to add it to this checklist because we already have it on the other checklist.
I was only curious because I know when we talked about it at planning board, Bill had questioned, you guys asked about the snow, but it's not in the guidelines.
Right.
So, but it is
Is it?
Or
It
is
is,
the submission?
it's in the planning board rules and regs,
Yeah.
so.
So, yeah, well,
Maybe we should make notes of those too, though, because I don't want somebody to take the checklist and think if they complete the checklist that they're done. If there's another checklist they have to go through too. I mean, even if we just reference it.
reference, please review, the planning board rules and regulations.
Yeah, I mean, it's already on the planning board and the ZBA web pages. So there's the site plan review application, and then there's the checklist that goes with it. So when they're coming to design review, of course, they're not necessarily submitting all of the is what's required for site plan review because they're so early in the design process. So ultimately, by the time you folks are ready to give your decision, it should be full application. But, chances are they wouldn't be showing snow storage when they're trying to get feedback on the building and, landscaping and stuff like that.
Well, doesn't it go under the landscaping question? Because that's where you leave a space, or there's areas that, it's like, Dave's always putting it into that point where when you start talking about your tree planting and your shrubbery, I remember just on West Main Street, that he was like, I don't think you should have that there because it's snow removal, they're not gonna be able to get in, they're not gonna be able to move around in there. It's because we got such small lots in many of these places on the commercial side. I think that's why it's thought.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's more of a site plan review issue than a design issue.
But you
But
do,
that's,
yeah, but you have to make how it all, you have to make it how it all goes. And I think that's why he brings that up every time with landscaping, because that's part of the visual.
Because then if you get to the planning board, and they say, well, nice landscaping, but there's no room for snow.
Right,
And then
Yeah,
the
so-
person would have to backtrack.
so I think it does belong under the landscaping and part of what we do, just because of the, the visuals, where everything, why come to them and then have to change them? The one Lyman Street, I don't know if that's on video. Do you know if it's on, no, you were
Yeah,
here.
because we were always on video, planning board's always been recorded,
Okay,
not design review though.
yeah, because when they came before, One Lyman Street had a beautiful presentation, probably the nicest presentation I've seen since I've been doing this. And they had everything, and they have everything in the elevation as well. I'd like to see where they started and how they came up with what they presented, because it was probably the nicest that we have had. And it's a great model to follow, and even for us to say, oh, this was thought of, that was thought of. That was
but it
quick.
was ultimately denied, so I don't
Well,
know.
No, it was approved, it went to
Oh,
the
it
neighbors,
was
the
approved?
neighbors.
It was the neighbors who
Neighbors
didn't want the
appealed
zoning,
it.
yeah, it wasn't
Okay.
us, it wasn't any of us, we all said it's beautiful, it's just, the neighbors were like, oh my God,
Wow.
right across the street from us.
Amy, if I
Yeah,
may, getting back to snow removal
Yeah,
requirements, it is mentioned in the zoning bylaws. There are off-street parking design standards.
Parking design
If
standards.
you've got the red book at page 7-5.
That's great, I mean, if the bylaw, it's easy to manipulate it.
Interior landscaping,
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
and then it's mentioned a couple more times down that page, so it is actually in here.
okay,
Good.
so we can just do a hyperlink to it.
Yeah, and then he's
Yeah.
got space on
So
the
I'll figure out what
parking.
category you want to put it in.
That might be where I said you need to comply with this section.
Yeah.
Parking, because it was so huge.
Right.
There were
Parking
some
was
of
a lot.
them where you said, 1 through 5, and I was gonna break them out, and I looked at it, and I was like, no. I'll link to the first one.
With me that less is more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we linked to the first one, and they all come up anyway, so.
Yeah, I definitely, I think if it's under parking, did you say it was under parking, right, Bob?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I would put it under the parking and that.
we don't know if we have a parking section.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
there's
what,
parking.
it's in the beginning, right?
It's in the parking section, which is 709030. actually, yeah, 709030. And it's B. It's C 1.
That's a good thing, if we can find it in the,
Page
on
105.
on the 360, the E code 360. If
Yeah.
you just click on the letter, it pops up with the.
C5.
And then to type it.
C5. So just do maybe something in here that talks about snow removal,
Do you want to take a
hyperlink
picture of it?
C5.
Yeah, let Mark take a picture of it. and
Which
wherever
one,
it is
Bob?
here.
You can't find it.
Page 7-105.
Yeah, I got that.
Go to parenthesis 5, interior landscaping.
Yeah, I'm there.
A, first line.
Oh, I got it right.
There's a lot
Yeah,
in this 7090207.
And then paragraph small c,
and then here's the page,
Yeah.
here to here.
it's kind of buried. It took me 10 minutes to find it, so.
Well, it's saying, as long as we get the people to look in that section, so they can read the whole section while they. look
Yeah.
later.
Well, unfortunately, sometimes reading the whole section is what exactly happened right now.
So that whole
Don't do
big
it.
section
So you get a
between
picture of this?
parking lot location, design and construction conform to bylaws.
Okay,
That's,
Is it the hyperlink
that's
there?
where I put that. And then parking lot landscaping and screening requirements, interior landscaping and lighting conform to bylaws.
So we can just write and snow removal or something.
section 2.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have section 5 in there. Okay.
My memory is.
Definitely is a lot.
My memory is off. When you talk about lighting, did dark sky compliant come in at town meeting?
It did,
Yes.
So that's changing.
yeah, so you gotta update that.
So you got what you need to put it where it needs to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Next time we'll have to make sure our food. And
Okay, all right, this was great. So thank you everybody for that.
here's what's your stuff.
And the last thing I had on the agenda was to talk about the sign guidelines, but truthfully, I haven't had time to go back and look, and I don't think anyone has with town meeting, but I just wanted to put on the agenda so I could mention maybe between now and the next meeting, Lori had typed something up and we can just review it and be ready to talk about it at the next meeting. And that's all I have.
Now, when we get.
Oh, we have
all-
minutes.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
do. I need to check those.
There's only one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was everybody okay with minutes?
I was okay with a minute.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, they were accurate.
Uh,
I know, well, I go back, I mean, at that point, with that meeting, I was kind of lost as to what we had to do and what we didn't do, so we captured that pretty accurately.
I love the minutes. I love them because like I can go back to it. It's like, when did we talk about that?
Yeah.
So they were good minutes.
All right, so I have to make well, I'm gonna, maybe what I'll do is I'll do I'll do a landscape and I'll do a portrait cover, depending on what happens.
Oh, I thought you were gonna make a motion to approve the minutes.
Not yet. Oh, sorry.
What you said, I'll get up.
Oh, okay. I make a motion to approve the minutes for March 7th, 2024.
Second. I can second
You can
that.
second, right?
And we'll all raise our hand.
Oh. there
Thank
go.
you, Michelle.
All right, but we're not adjourning yet, I just want to double check. So I'm gonna do a landscape and a portrait. And the other question I just had was, there's another thing. Oh, so this, the sign guideline booklet that we're gonna put together, is that something that's also gonna be attached to all the stuff that you give them?
The way I envisioned it is that it would just be a chapter in the design guidelines, so, you know, it would have to, be modified, and I know, you guys during that meeting that I missed, you had wanted to change some of the guidelines,
Okay.
so, you know, all of that should be ideally done at the same time.
Yeah, I don't
in
know
my
how
opinion.
up to date those
Yeah.
meetings would be, because,
All right, so that would be something we do after we incorporate what happened on the meeting, town meeting.
yeah, but some of those guidelines are like when we wanted to define the electric building as 40%, and I'm fine with leaving that the way it was. As long as I know when I'm doing a review that it kind of kicks in at 40%.
Okay. Yeah, so that,
So that's probably how it is.
okay.
Well, we can do, two is, you know, assuming all of these changes are adopted, then we'll have to update the checklist to reflect the new
Right, yeah.
guidelines, so. Yeah,
So maybe
there's that.
Maybe a compilation.
Well, and even some of the bylaws, I mean, that we reference about parking and stuff like that, I some changes are probably coming in the next year or so on handicap parking, you know, in front, stuff like that, that the other towns are doing, so.
Yeah, we never talk about that much, handicap parking.
Well, it's part of the code, so,
Handicap parking is part of AAB, that's set in stone.
Yes,
So-
yes, no, I know. The question that I'm asking is, we really rarely talk about it. And you know, that how many you have to have so many per spaces.
There's a schedule, and I check that before it goes to any of you guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
but what some of the towns have been doing, you know, it was the big trend in 2009 to have no parking in front of the building. And now they've come back and like Devon's allows the handicap parking in front of the building, you know, to kind of compromise between the two. Now they've actually added EV charging can also go in front of the building and shuttle vans and things like that. So those are bylaws that they're gonna get addressed by other people at some point.
One of the things that I've kind of questioned, and I heard the other day that it's a proposed change, is that we have energy requirements for EV charging. You know, there's a certain amount that's required, depending on the situation. We also have handicap parking, which is required based on the situation, and both have schedules in terms of how many you need to have.
Mhm.
My question is, how many handicapped EV spaces are required?
Let's say if they're both in front, you just have the overlap.
Yeah, right now, there's no requirement for that, but I'm told that, AAB is working on some sort of an amendment that would require probably at least one,
Makes sense.
something like that, yeah.
That knows how about,
You know, like when you mentioned that we needed 11 at the fire station, the parking lot.
20%,
So it's 20%. Is that something that could be a waiver? Is that something that
unless you want to appeal to the state,
well, that's what I'm asking.
the Department of Energy Resources,
Yeah,
and you won't get it,
well, I mean,
They're really hard.
you won't get it.
But they only
Those
provide
guys
the
are
wires.
hardcore, and once the governor gave them the energy code,
yeah,
they ran with it like a bunch of banshees. And we can't ask questions. And if we do, they won't answer them. And the way they do it is, they put it out there, that's it.
I have seen examples where people have been able to get relief for, you know, if they exceed the slope requirement along the frontage of the road. And usually it's because there's no physical way it can be accomplished.
right.
Because the building is in a fixed location. And then, of course, the road is in a fixed location, so you gotta work with what you have in
Right.
between the building and the road, and if the building is close enough to the road, then obviously you're not demolishing the building, so you can't comply. So in those circumstances, they will grant relief. And that's happened a few times.
And Susan, who do you apply for to get relief?
So it's the applicant that has to apply to the state, and it's the Architectural Access Board, I believe.
Or they're the ones who would do that? Because, you know, when you think about it, I mean, I'm not a proponent for everything going electric, because you're gonna have one supplier for everything. That's never a good idea. But right now, the trends, as we talk about, 2009, the trends are parking in the back. The trends are to push toward everything electric, which at some point may come back, where it's not, everything's gonna be electric. It may change in 2 years, it may change in 5 years. But when you look at,
could change in November.
yeah, it could change in November. But when you look at the requirements that are made, so that how much do these stations cost somebody to install? How much do they cost it to run? Who's responsible for paying for the electricity? How do you get the money back?
Yeah.
Yes, none of that's addressed, which I would certainly talk with the legislator now and get something going on that, because you know something? How many cars in our town are electric? How many cars are going to be going to the fire station to go inside that needs to be recharged? That's fine, because you're coming in to use one of our services. But if you're coming from Westboro and you're coming from Shrewsbury and you're coming from everywhere else, because that's where they are, I don't think that's a good thing to be. I mean, that puts responsibility on us to make sure that all this stuff is working, and at 20% is pretty high when you, if that's what 30 parking spaces is 20%.
Very high.
So that to me is like, it's almost, it's unwieldy, but it's not, again, fair for the towns to have to take that kind of responsibility when electricity is a great idea, but we went through this in the 60s. I gotta build a house with all electric heat. And then you couldn't get rid of the houses because you couldn't afford to live in them. Nobody wanted to buy them. Nobody wanted to deal with it.
When the DOER took control of the energy code, they came out with their rollouts. There was the biggest and most frequent questions asked were, they did the research, and with the added insulation requirements, the added thermal requirements, the charging stations, the solar ready requirements, all the infrastructure that you need to build into a house, turned out to be, on an average single family house, is close to $50,000 to $80,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an onerous increase. Okay, and then when you're talking about trying to keep housing affordable.
Right.
Okay, if you're building high density housing, they have the same requirements.
Yeah.
So, if you're building a higher density home, okay, you've got, say it's $40,000. That hurdle just got higher.
Right.
For the buyer.
Right.
And we told them, I said, this is, R60 in an attic. You'll never get the money back.
Right.
It's already been proven. They just went over and above. R38 was fine. And if you add any more than that, you're spending money, you'll never recover.
Right.
That was brought up to them, and they said, this is what you get.
Well, and again, that, like I said, with politics and everything else, you
It's all politics.
start pushing through something else. The other thing is that there's
Does she want her back?
advertising abilities on these machines.
I wrote on it, but,
As well.
Advertising abilities, like when you go to Wegmans,
oh, sorry,
You know,
I wrote on it.
it's got 2 or 3 different people that write.
The thing that doesn't make a lot of common sense to me is that you need time to charge and what to
She
see.
just wrote some.
Okay,
Okay.
if you go to
No,
the fire
that's the
station,
red.
unless you're there all
Yeah,
day,
those are.
Right.
you're in and out of there for a permit or for a 10-minute meeting or something like that. It's useless.
Right,
If you go into Wegmans, you go into Walmart, you go into the dentist, you're gonna be there for an hour.
Right.
If you're gonna be someplace for like an hour or more,
right,
then I think having a charge station is worth it. If it's something shorter than that, like CVS,
and
it's a waste, it's a waste.
It's a total,
Well, unless the employees have.
Like I said, if you're there longer than an hour,
yeah,
from an employee, it's fine,
now, how many of them have to have like the actual stations? Like how many?
All of them.
6?
6.
Yeah.
11 have to be wired
Yeah.
or ready to go.
Yeah.
6 of them have to be installed.
that's crazy.
And they have to be a certain class, there's 3 classes of chargers. And they've got to be the
And
minimum
that's-
class 2.
And they just slow down the,
You'll have to talk to your
you
representative.
betcha, you betcha,
Well,
that's what
I
it
mean,
is.
the deadlines on these are what, 2030 or 2035, so they'll work themselves out by then.
Yeah, no, well, they'll probably do more.
Okay.
So the last thing I want to say about that, then who decides how advertising is handled on those tubes? Because that's gonna come up too.
The tubes, what do you mean?
When you go to Wegmans and you're gonna
Oh, signs
go up to the,
on
Yeah,
the charging
yeah.
stations.
okay, on the charging station, they have revolving signs, it's like, the new billboards. It's all electronic,
Really?
yeah,
Are they there now?
they're there now.
It goes Excedrin headache number 34.
Well, you could be a wet.
Well, you'd have to put the sign bylaw, you'd have to say, no signs on electric charging stations.
Well, you gotta do it. I mean, you do it now
A
because you,
sign is a sign.
that's right,
Whether it's on a charging station or wall, it's still,
that's right.
good grief.
So those are things that I'd like to bring up in digest. Thank you very much. Okay, so I will re-adjourn. I did this the last time. I looked at the minutes.
We adjourned, kept talking and then
I'd like to bring the motion to re-adjourn. What is it? 9:40.
Okay, thanks.
I need a second.
Oh, second.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Yeah.